First Supper is the third episode of the first season of Back to You. This is directed by the wonderful James Burrows, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I talk about the episode. It's definitely not as funny as the previous two episodes. That's not to say I didn't enjoy it, but I definitely didn't laugh as much as I did with the previous ones. And I feel like the restaurant scene should have been longer, or they should have started it earlier so that we could cut back to it more frequently. But I'll talk more about that when we get there. It actually starts off with the broadcast and Marsh is messing things up, and then Montana is going through a depression. I did not figure out why she responded the way she did until she explains it, and it actually turns out, we learn pretty quickly after, that Montana's boyfriend was the guy in Marsh's story who was seen with another woman. So that's an awkward way to find out that your boyfriend is cheating on you. Gary says some crass comments to Montana. I've mentioned before that while I find the show very funny so far, I don't really appreciate the comments towards Montana, mostly about her appearance, and Ryan yelled at Gary for what he said, and I like that finally somebody was pointing out that that's not appropriate. I really appreciated that. Even though we find out, as Chuck kind of suggests to Ryan only said that because he has a crush on Montana. Will something come of that? I have absolutely no idea, but I will guess I will find out in due course. We then go back and forth mostly between Gary and Chuck and Kelly. Gary shows Marsh his demo reel, and this is because he wants to get a proper anchor position rather than being out in the field all the time. The demo reel was fine. I don't think I found it as funny as I was meant to. I didn't find it as funny as Marsh found it, at any rate. We then have the restaurant scene, and Kelly is there with Gracie. And Chuck comes in. He's supposed to be on a date, but his date had car trouble, so he's on his own, and Gracie sees him, and Kelly tries to pretend she doesn't see him. And Gracie, quite politely, asks if she should invite him to sit with them. And I like Gracie's attitude. Gracie always has a quick response for Kelly. At least this is what I'm learning. And Gracie points out that Kelly said if she sees somebody sitting alone in the cafeteria, she should ask them to join them. So she takes that advice and calls out to Chuck, and he comes over, and we then cut back briefly to Ryan comforting Montana. It's a nice way to edit things to keep things flowing, but really it's not that interesting. Ryan has some good words of wisdom, some good comfort for her, but in general I wasn't that fascinated by it. But I did love the scenes in the restaurant. We do cut back to the restaurant scene, and Chuck and Gracie are now playing a drinking game. Obviously, Gracie's not drinking alcohol, but every time Kelly tells them to do something, every time she bosses them about, they take a drink, which helps to confirm Kelly's kind of personality. She clearly likes to be in control of the situation. I think she likes to have things organised and done a certain way, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I found that to be very funny, but at the same time, in reality, I think that's probably not the best tactic for Chuck. If Chuck is trying to convince Kelly to let him be in Gracie's life, then siding with Gracie and ganging up on Kelly probably wasn't the best approach. And then we do have another broadcast. Then after that, Kelly and Chuck are arguing, and something is actually revealed that I think is quite important. And I didn't come to this conclusion, so it was nice to have it spelled out. The reason Kelly was being quite negative in the restaurant and not really wanting Chuck to be there, or indeed not wanting to be there with Chuck, is because she was actually feeling guilty. Because, as she says, that night at the restaurant, she began to realise that maybe she'd been denying Gracie something her entire life. She denied Gracie potentially a good father, because she saw Gracie getting along well with Chuck, they're having fun. Obviously, there's more to being a father than that, but she did see in that moment that Chuck could have brought value into Gracie's life, and simply because she didn't want to tell him about Gracie, Gracie has not had that father figure. And I think that that's really important, and I think something, in most cases, I personally believe every child should know both of their parents. There are exceptions. There are always some just horrible, nasty people who are a terrible influence on everybody, and it would not be good for the child to know them. But I think in most cases, the child should know both of their parents. They should have all of the facts they need, and they should get to make the decision about whether they want a relationship with either parent. And Kelly hasn't given Gracie that chance. And Chuck suggests that actually it's not too late. And then Kelly starts to suggest things that they could do, and it ultimately ends up with him going on a cruise to Disney, or a Disney cruise with screaming children everywhere, and Chuck kind of temporarily checked out at that point, realising that that might be a little bit too much too soon. And I think, I don't think Kelly was testing him there. I think she was just playing with the situation. I don't think she was genuinely thinking, okay, I'll give him all of these examples of a thing a parent might have to do, and if he runs from it, then we'll draw a line under this. I don't think that's what she was doing. I think she was just trying to wind him up and torment him. But if anybody has a different reading of the situation, please feel free to let me know. It's not a bad episode. It ends with Gary leaving the room and then everybody watching his reel on all of the multiple televisions. It looked great, but it wasn't... I didn't mind it. I didn't find it that funny. As I said, I would have liked the restaurant scenes to be a bit longer. I would have liked to have seen Chuck interacting more with Gracie, and I'm hoping that this is something we do increasingly get more of as the episodes go on. I liked this episode, absolutely. Definitely wasn't as funny as the previous two episodes, but it's not a bad episode, and I'm still looking forward to the next one. Keen to find out what happens next, because even though I've seen this show before, about 14 years ago, or maybe 12 years ago, I don't remember, and I don't really remember what happens. So I am excited to find out. This may not be the funniest, but I still definitely enjoyed it.